video, I'm going to explain what return statements are, functions. So in the last video, we talked about functions, saw how we could create different functions. But what we didn't talk about was return type. Now, let's say, for example, you want to write a function to calculate percent, and you don't actually want to print out that value in main function. Let's say you in the function itself let's say you want to do some specific processing with that person's age. Now, how do we do this? What you can do is we can write a function called calculate age, and we can return that value to where it was called from. Now, the way you typically write functions that return something specific, we first pass in the return type, then the name of the function, then if it has parameters, we pass the parameter, then the curly bracket. So this is how we have been writing functions before. We said void say hi, then we're just printing hi to print. Now, this void itself represents that our function called say hi isn't returning anything back to where it was called from. So what I mean is, if I call this say hi function say hi, and I decide to run this program, it's just going to print out hi screen, because we have told it to print hi out to the screen. As you, it's not actually returning anything, and we have specified that the function say hi does not return anything because the return type is void. But what if you want to, as you said before, calculate the age of a person? So first, we need to specify a return type. I'm going to say int because we want to return the age of that person. I'm going to say int calculate age, and in here we're just going to take in one parameter, which is the person's date of birth. I'm going to take in that parameter and say int date of birth ir. Now, what do we want to do? We want to return the current year, which is 2023, minus date of birth. So what exactly does this do? We declared a function called calculate age, and we declared that the return type is an integer. So it means that anytime we're using the return statement, we always have to return something that is equal to the data type we had defined. So the return type has to be equal to what we are returning from the function. So we're just taking in a user's date of birth, and then we're saying return 2023 date of birth. So I will just call this function here and say calculate age. I will pass in, let's say, 1990 example. Now, after calling this function, I'm going to run it, and it's just going to print out say hi. But if you notice, nothing happened. It didn't print out the person's age. That is because all we did was return person's age, which was calculated. We haven't actually done anything with the age which just recovered, which we had gotten from calculated. So how we can use this data is we can just write a print statement and say printf to percent d years. And what we can now do is we can call that function called calculate age. So it's going to print out to you whatever this function returns. It's going to print that out years old. So if I save that and run it right now, you'll see that it is hi. First print hi from the say hi function, and it says 33 years old. So that is how we can use return types, calculate do different things. So the return type just basically specifies, okay, what is my function going to return back to where it was? And then when we want to return that actual, we just use the return keyword. Then we type whatever thing we want to return back where it was called. Now we can also write a different function just to show you how this works. We can call it char calculate grade. Now this is just going to take in an integer, or no, let's say floating point number. We're going to collect float fl float exam grade, exam score. So what we are going to do is we are going to calculate what a user's grade is, or what a student's grade is, if based on what they scored. So if a student gets above 90, A, he gets below 90. If their score is between 90 and 80, if it is less than 90 but greater than 80. So let's write that. We're going to say if our exam score greater than 90, then we are going to return, we're just going to return A. We're going to explain this. Then we're going to now say else if our exam score is less than 90 and and exam score is greater than or equals to 80, then it means we're just going to return B. So now what we are simply doing here is we wrote a function called calculate grade, and it returns a character, a char data type. So we're also taking in a parameter which is of float, which is a float rather, and the name of the variable is exam score. So we want to say if the exam score is greater than 90, then we want to return A, that is user got and students got A. We now want to say else if the score less than 90 and the score is greater than or equals to 80. That is if the users or the student score falls between 80 and 90, then we want to return a B. So we are doing this because we are returning a B and an A because we specify that our function, which is calculate grade, returns a character data type. So now if we want to call it, we can just come down and say going to printf, and then we're going to say your grade from exam is percent C, because we're trying to print out the character. And then we're just going to call the calculate grade function. We're going to pass in, let's say we pass in 95. Our student is a very smart student. Just going to put this thing. So if I clear my terminal right now, I run this code. It's So it says, hi, at 33 years old, your grade from the exam is. So it says, hi, you are 33 years old and your grade from the exam is. So we can see now that the code is working well, and we created three functions. One which returns nothing, it just prints something to this. Second one which calculates a user's age, and it returns an integer data type. And the third one, a function which calculates a student's grade and it returns a character data type. If I entered something like 81, or let's say if I entered 80, for example, now, I'm expecting that it prints B. So let's run it. And it says your grade from the exam is B. So you can see now that the functions that we wrote are working well. Everything we have written so far is good. So that is all we're going to talk about in this video. Return function, return statement.